Chairman, we're now live.
Thank you, and a warm welcome to those attending and viewing on our Council YouTube channel, London Hillingdon. My name is Councillor Henry Higgins. I'm the Chairman for this meeting. Details of business to be considered today are shown on the agenda, copies of which are accessible in the room and online under the Broad Live broadcast. For those present in the room and attending to speak, please note that you will be filmed and any statement you make will be recorded and made public. A reminder to anybody speaking today that your voice will only be audible online when the microphone is switched on. Fire alarms, we are not expecting any, so if we do, please follow officers out of the building, out of the room. If you have mobile or tablet devices, please can you make them on silent, although councillors like myself have our computers in front of us and officers to view the agenda. I will go now to the attendees before we move to the agenda. Introducing councillors, Councillor Tuckwell, who's my Vice Chairman, Councillor Tubadar, Councillor Gohill, Councillor Mand, Councillor Savoy is sending his apologies, is that correct? I'll let you do that properly after I've spoken, and Councillor Singh, welcome. Officers we have present today, Planning Service Manager Ros Johnson, Planning Team Leader Kate Crosby, Planning Officer Fiona Ray. We also have someone new today, Hayden Richards, welcome. Principal Planning Officer, Alan Tilley, and Salah Joby is our legal advisor, and obviously the most important person here is Liz, who, if I don't do anything, I get a kick under the table, which you guys don't see, but if I say ouch, you know why. Okay, so we'll have apologies for absence first, please, Liz.
Apologies have been received from Councillor Sansapori this evening. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Declarations of interest in matters becoming before us. Has any councillors done something? No? Good. To receive and agree the minutes of the last meeting, is that agreed? Thank you very much. Matters notified in advance or urgent, there are none. And to confirm that all reports are in public today. And also, before we start, can I just tell everybody that item 8 has been withdrawn from the agenda. So now I'll move swiftly on to the main agenda items. And the first one we have tonight is pavements outside 8 Clive Parade Green Lane in Northwood. I will be taking number 6 and number 10 together for these. I know one of them is petition, one isn't. Petitioners, the rules are quite clear. You have 5 minutes, and when you press the button, and you have a traffic light system, and it will go to amber when you've got a minute left, and it will go to red. I will stop you, regardless. Please don't think I'm rude, but I will just stop you. So we get straight away. So with item 6. Kate.
Thank you, Chairman. So items 6 and 10 are two associated applications. So one is for planning permission for a freestanding multifunctional communication hub, and the associated application is for advertisement consent, and that's to install an 86-inch digital advertising screen on the proposed hub. So I think at this stage it's important to note that while applications for planning permission can be assessed against all planning matters, applications for advertisement consent are restricted to an assessment of amenity and public safety. So if we have a look at the constraints, the planning constraints map here, you can see that the site, it's with the red there, so the site itself is within a primary shopping area, the Northwood Town Centre Green Lane Conservation Area, and it's also within the setting of the Grade 2 listed War Memorial, and also the locally listed Barclays Bank, which is there, and the War Memorial is on the corner there. Okay, so if we just go to some images of the site. So here you can see that the advertisement screen and hub are proposed in a prominent location at the heart of the conservation area. You can see the War Memorial here, so it's within the setting of the Grade 2 listed heritage asset, which is the focus of this public realm. And if we click to the next image, It will show you when it catches up. It's just a little delay, but it just has another image viewing in the other direction, so you can also see the Barclays Bank. So importantly, this location is also used for a number of community and promotional high street events throughout the year, which includes wreath laying on Remembrance Day. There we go. So there's the Barclays Bank there. Okay, so it's also, so the site of where it will be placed will be outside the Costa Coffee. Okay, so this is how it would appear in situ. So you've got how it is currently on the left, and then on the right, and another image in the other direction, which will be there in 1 second. Okay, so the dimensions of the hub itself would be 2.63 metres high, and the width would be 1.34 metres, and it would have a depth of 0.92 metres, including the canopy. The drawing isn't quite catching up, but that's an idea of what the dimensions are. And the display screen itself would be approximately 1.9 metres by 1.1 metres. There we go. Okay, so features of the hub itself include a defibrillator, a free phone, and access to web pages for wayfinding and access to council services. There are optional features as well, such as there's options to measure air quality and pedestrian volume. But notwithstanding the stated benefits of the proposals, officers don't consider that these outweigh the harms that have been identified within the committee report. So officers have recommended that planning permission be refused on 3 grounds, and these are clarified within the addendum report. So the grounds are 1, the harmful impact on the character and appearance of the Northwood Town Centre and the street scene. 2, the harmful impact on the heritage assets, specifically the conservation area and settings of the listed War Memorial and Barclays building. And number 3, that it would compromise the use of the public realm for community and high street promotional events. So therefore would undermine the vitality of the town centre as a social and economic hub. So with respect to the advertisement consent, so as clarified within the addendum report, we can only refuse on matters of amenity and public safety impacts. So we've recommended that advertisement consent be refused on 2 amenity grounds. So that is the impact on the character and appearance of the town centre and street scene, and also the impact on the heritage assets. Thank you.
Thank you, Kate. So it's a thing. We have a petitioner, Trevor Shirley. Would you like to come to the table, please? You're well informed about these events. I've seen you here many times, so I'm not going to go. Whenever you're ready, Trevor.
I am Trevor Shirling and deal with planning matters for the Northwood Residents Association. There are 2 applications, and for ease, my presentation is the same for both. I would like to highlight some of the points made by the planning officer to show why we support the recommendation to refuse consent to both applications. The planning officer has set out in the report the damaging impact this would have in a high-profile position within the Northwood Town Centre conservation area. It is by the listed War Memorial, and specifically is an area of community congregation, including residents, local organisations, and police displays with gazebos, and the Remembrance Day annual service and wreath laying. The location is on a narrowing part of the pavement in a busy pedestrian flow area. The planning officer also describes it as a disrespectful installation given the proposed location. The planning officer has identified the main gain would be the commercial gain to the applicant, which does not outweigh the harm it would do in connection with the long-established community events. The planning officer points out the advertisement is designed to catch the eye, and we would add that it is at a very busy corner for traffic and pedestrians. I have seen pedestrians crossing Green Lane by the old Barclays Bank building on the other side of the road towards this location. Yet if the advertisement first catches the eye of the car drivers, then that pedestrian could be at risk. We therefore agree with and fully support the planning officer's recommendation to refuse consent to both applications. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Does any councillors wish to ask a question? No, I will, because I am the ward councillor, so I'll ask a question. On the other side of the road, there's a BT, very similar sort of construction. Is that correct?
There's another sign.
Yeah. So there's already one on the. I'm trying to say, there's already one on the high street, isn't there? So two. Yeah, exactly. I think. Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay. I'm led to believe the applicant is not here. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct, Chairman. He's not attending this evening.
Is he given in a written statement?
No written statement.
Okay, as none of the ward councillors are, well, I'm here, but I'm not allowed to be a ward councillor now. I'll open it straight to the floor. Councillor Tockwell.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to the petitioner for sharing their thoughts this evening. For me, the concept of the comms hub, I fully support. I think they're a new way of communicating with communities, and they offer the added benefit of a few other things as well, which was good to see, the defibrillator, air quality, and everything else. That's where sort of my support stops for this. It's clearly in the wrong place. The report is very well put together and does talk about particularly the heritage bit, and I know a lot of comment was made around Remembrance Sunday, and I think with a couple of weeks' time, this area is going to be very busy for I'm sure there's other events on top of Remembrance Sunday itself, and this will just get in the way. It will provide a risk, and indeed people will want to see what is a very special heritage asset for this part of the world, and I think it will just get in the way. So good concept, wrong area. But I did also just want to pick up the highways issue, which I know was also touched on. Again, just looking at that image there, is there not a highways impact? And I think that the petitioner did make reference to, obviously drivers catching their eye, taking their eye off the road. Is there not something which we could add as a refusal reason, which would, be added to this? Because I do believe, but I'll listen to what officers have got to say, that there could be a potential for this to increase the risk on the highway. Thank you,
Councillor Tockwell. Alan, would you like to comment on that, please?
Thank you very much, Chairman. The distance between the proposed sign and the front wall of the Costa, that's 5.63 metres. The seating has got a licence to occupy a space of 1 metre, so that gives a space of 4.63 metres. So there's 4.63 metres of footway in between the seating and the proposed sign. Manual for Streets recommends a minimum footway width of 2 metres. So the 4.6 metres that remains is compliant with the guidance that we follow, Manual for Streets. Were the application to be recommended for approval, the Highway Authority would want a condition on the use of the sign, how it can display. For example, we would not wish it to have a flashing image. It would scroll between images at fixed amounts of time, and it should not resemble a road sign at all. So, should the application be recommended for refusal, we would have conditions that we would be able to use that would make sure it didn't distract drivers. As it is presented, it provides ample width for pedestrians, buggies, children walking with friends to pass. So I'm afraid I can't offer any highways reason for refusal, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Alan. Can I ask though if does events that are taking place? I agree with you. At the moment, you can walk by there. They've actually removed the bin to even give them more room to walk down there, which is another concern of mine. Why they removed that, because that still should be there. But when we have events on and does that the public highway realm? Does that change anything with conditions on this? Is it just considered when it's quiet and it's being used?
For the purposes of my review, I've taken into account the street functioning as a street for the passage of pedestrians.
Okay.
I've got manual for streets in front of me, and that recommends a width of 4 metres for play or more. So even then, that would suggest that the 4.6 metres is satisfactory, taking account it is set back somewhat from the War Memorial Hall.
Okay.
Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Alan. Anybody else? Oh, yes, Councillor Tucker, would you like to come back?
If I just may come back on that, Mr. Chairman, thank you. No, thank you, Alan, for sharing your view on the highways impact. I think, if it was up for approval, there would be strong conditions to limit the risk of it catching people's eyes. So I kind of get that, and I think on that basis, I'd be interested in what other colleagues have got to say, but I'd be happy to move officer's recommendation for refusal for both. Thank you.
Councillor Tubular.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I echo what Councillor Tocqueville was saying, and I would like to second the officer's recommendation for refusal.
Thank you. So that for both of them, yes?
For both of them, sir.
Okay,
yes.
So is that okay? So that we're taking. Do we have to take them separately? Do we take them separately?
For the purposes of clarity, maybe we should have a vote on each one separately.
Okay, fine. Okay. Anybody else got anything to say? No?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
That's fine. Oh, Councillor Mann.
Just wanted to add a question, maybe for the officers if they want to take this away and get back just for my own sort of general knowledge. In regards to the benefits of these communication hubs, which Councillor Tuckwell did mention, I do support that. They can be useful in terms of giving us the environmental impact and giving us access to council pages. Is there a possibility, or is there a provision currently going on where we're earmarking potential sites within Hillingdon where we could have these facilities?
I don't know. I'll ask the officers. It's business related, isn't it?
So there have been a number of applications that we've dealt with under delegated powers. So we have granted consent for some and also refused others. So we are in some discussions with the applicant for those, but we haven't gone so far as to sort of pinpoint suitable locations. But there is some ongoing dialogue.
So, Councillor, the reason it's come to committee is because this is the conservation area. And it's been petitioned as well, so that's the reason. So, otherwise, it would have been dealt with delegated powers. Okay, so I am proposed and seconded for item 6 first. Can I have a vote of hands with officer's recommendation of refusal? That's unanimous. And for item 10, can I have the same first and second? Okay, and that's refused as well. Thank you very much. So that's all been done. Now, the second one is item 7, 139 Belmont Road. This is over to you, Hayden.
Thank you very much. I will just try to see if I can get the slides to catch up. Okay, so item 7 refers to 139 Belmont Road, Uxbridge. Planning permission is sought to demolish the existing dwelling and to replace it with 3 properties in the form of a block of terraces. The application is recommended for a refusal on grounds that the development would be harmful to the character and appearance of the area, and now I'll quickly run through the rationale behind the recommendation. So here we have the site. As you can see, it's on the north side of Belmont Road. Next we have the constraints map. As you can see, there's no notable constraints for the site. To the north you have an area of special local character, however the development site does not lie within that area. Next we've got some photos of the site. So this is the existing house. At the moment it's got sort of a chalet bungalow look to it. It's quite low rise, although it is 2-storey, and it fits in with the other buildings in the area. To the right of the site you've got number 141 Belmont Road, which is another 2-storey detached property. Here are some of the side elevation windows facing the development site at present, and to the other side you've got number 137, and there are other first floor side elevation windows facing the development site at present. So what I wanted to point you to is the area is characterised by detached uniquely designed properties, which are generally 2-storey in height, and I think them being detached is a major aspect of the area's character. Here are some street scene elevations. So as you can see, as I pointed out and as stated in the officer's report, there are a lot of detached properties, and like I said, they're all unique in their character. There aren't any, as far as I know from my site visit, flats or terrace blocks on this particular road. Just moving on, here's a bird's eye view of the site, and it sort of reiterates that the area is quite spacious. All the properties are detached. They have large, spacious rear gardens. There's some greenery to the rear of the rear gardens of those of the mentioned properties. I'm just going to quickly skip through these plans because there are too many of them. Just want you to focus quickly on the elevation plan showing the existing house. As you can see, it is actually wider than some of the other detached houses in the area, the two immediate neighbours. However, it is low rise, and because it's low rise, it's quite discreet in terms of its impact on the street scene, and because it's detached, it fits in with the existing character of the area.
And sorry to interrupt you, is that box interfere? I mean, I was going to do it after this presentation.
It's fine.
Okay,
I know
that's fine.
enough about the site. Thank you. I'm just going to skip now quickly to the proposed plans. So as you can see, you've got 3 properties set out as a block of terraces. The most important plan would probably be the elevation plan. So as you can see, there's a massive increase in the bulk of the building. In my opinion, it's oversized for the site. It's also uncharacteristic in terms of what I just pointed out. The rest of the area is characterised by detached, uniquely designed properties. So I think the next slide should show quite a clear image of how uncharacteristic this development is and how oversized and prominent it will be. Well, it's not as big as it was on my screen, but but yeah. So in short, you've got the existing street scene below, and you've got the proposed street scene above. I think as I said, I think it shows clearly that the area is characterised by detached, uniquely designed properties, and we're introducing this large, oversized, unduly prominent, bulky building, which is completely out of keeping with the character of the area, and also it would be unduly prominent when seen against the other properties in the area. And the full reasons for refusal are set out in the officer's delegated report. So yeah, that's me.
Well done, Howden. Very good. Thank you very much. Fine. So we have Mr. David Knight. Would you like to come to the table? Whenever you're ready, and we'll time you out.
Hello, I'm David Knight. I live directly opposite the property in question. I've spoke to all the neighbours around, and none of us are in favour of this. It's going to be a huge development, and it's going to dwarf all the other houses around us. That's why we've got 10 letters of objection and the petition as well, with 26 names on it. The site is currently 198 metres squared of living space, and it's going to increase to 462. So it's, it's more than doubling in size. The terraced house is proposed. There's no other terraced houses on that road. They're all detached, as Mr. Richardson said. And they're all very interesting in style. They were all built before the Second World War. So, you're getting rid of some character from Uxbridge. This will set a precedent in future with everyone wanting to sell up to developers, rather than stay in an area where the soul gets taken away with these blocks. These developers know the price of everything, but the value of nothing. The development will increase pressure on local medical facilities and schooling. There was a planning application 14 years ago, which was similar in size, which was rejected, but that was for 7 flats instead of 3 houses. Going on to parking, each 4-bedroom terraced house will have 1 car park space. This is going to lead to cars out on the road. There's not many car parking spaces as there is. We've got Hermitage School down the road, and with more cars, there's more chances of car accidents as well. There's a roundabout further up, about 20-30 metres away, and there's a lot of accidents there. My brother's had an accident, and there's an Indian gentleman on the corner who reversed his car out and he's disabled now. It's a dangerous spot. So if you've got this property with this one car parking space for each property, it's not enough for a 4-bedroom house, and they're going to be all squeezing in and squeezing out. And to make it worse, there's a bus stop outside. So you've got a bus stop, you've got a roundabout, you've got overcrowding, you've got overdevelopment here. And the height of the property is the neighbours to both sides of it. They've told me they don't like the idea of a huge block next to them, and it's going to, the height is going to take their light away, and there's going to be noise concerns and privacy concerns as well. So it's for all these reasons that we wish that it's the huge size of it is the problem, as Mr. Richardson said. So we wish for it to be rejected. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Knight. Does any councillors have any questions for the petitioner? No? Thank you. You may take your seat. Can you turn the microphone off for me, please? Sorry, can you turn the microphone off for me?
Sorry.
Thank you. Thanks very much. Okay, do we have the agent present, Mr. John Leach? Yeah, so take a seat, please. Same principles, 5 minutes you got. Okay.
My name is John Leach. I'm an architect, Kruzhnitsky Leach Architects. I didn't realise that we had to pre-submit our presentation, so I'm afraid we don't have anything to show. And I just wonder, actually I wouldn't mind talking on this point, but maybe it's probably quite useful just to talk about this actually, because I think this section addresses most of the issues. I suppose first to start with the site, what's unusual about the site is it's actually 2 plots wide, so it's actually a very wide site. It's 22 metres wide and 44 metres deep. So it's a 1,000 square metre site in a town centre location with excellent transport links. So it would be a shame if it remained as a single property on such a huge site. I mean, it's extreme. It wouldn't strike me as very good value in terms of the use of the land area. The existing building is it's a single story with a kind of chalet style roof. It's very much unusual in the context. It's the only bungalow on the street, so I think replacing it with something else, which is unusual, to me doesn't seem like a great move away from what's there. I mean, in effect, actually you can see from the elevations and from the massing of the roof form, all we've done effectively is lifted up by a single story. I think any development that happens on this site in future, and it's logical that a development would happen given the scale of the existing building, it would take a very similar form to what's there, but perhaps it would be detached, which does seem to be the preference. But again, such a wide site, and what we're proposing here are very large, very comfortable, highly sustainable family homes. And again, just in terms of the actual overall site, each individual property would have 333 square metres of site, which is pretty generous. So very, very good quality homes in a sustainable location. The design of what we've proposed is taken pretty much exactly from the existing buildings. I mean, it really does carry the DNA of buildings all along the street. We've taken the roof pitches, the eaves, the ridge heights, the proportions of the windows, the materials, every single characteristic of the existing buildings have been used and employed in the new design. Just going back to the form again, as you can see, the original form of the building has these 2 protruding gables. So we've effectively, as I said, it's almost as if we're just adding an additional floor to the building, but we've retained that, so it still reads. You can still read the rhythm of the individual properties along the street. With regards overlooking or overshadowing or car parking or any other issue, none of that has been raised. It's just purely the refusal for this project would purely come down to, is a terraced form acceptable in this location? Now, there are terraced properties on Belmont Road. They're at the start of Belmont Road. There's also flatted development properties which are a very large footprint on Belmont Road. The character of the street is very varied. It looks likely that each of the individual plots were sold off individually, and so you have a very individual response to each of the houses, clearly kind of done within a short period of time, probably 1930s to 1950s. But I think that our scheme very much respects all of that. You know, it's in terms of the overall form and appearance, it's very respectful of that. I just one point with regards to the NPPF, and it's that decision makers should seek to approve applications for sustainable development. So I think, you know, I mean, in terms of the sustainable development, for this to be diluted down to a couple of houses or even just to one house, I mean, it doesn't on such a close proximity to a town centre. It just seems to me very hard to justify. So
thank you, Mr. Leach. Your time is up. Thank you. Does anybody have any questions for the applicant? No. Thank you very much. You may take a seat.
Thank you.
Okay. We don't have any councillors' statements or anything. No. Okay, so open it straight to the floor. Councillor Tubadar.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm looking at the application and taking into account that the proposed development fails to integrate with the established character and appearance of the area. It's harmful to visual amenities, and therefore I fully support the officer's recommendation for refusal, but I also would like the officers to address the petitioner's concern with regard to parking, please.
Alan?
Thank you, Chairman. The development would provide 3 car parking spaces, which is in accordance with the published London plan, and remember, those are maximum standards, so it's compliant with the London plan, and in the vicinity of the development is a car parking management scheme. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Alan. Councillor Tubadar, would you like to come back?
Thank you, Alan, and thank you, Mr. Chairman. Therefore, I would like to propose that we go with the officer's recommendation of refusal, please. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Tuckwell, you said... sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The concept of taking a large plot and converting it to multiple family homes is very attractive. I think it was mentioned in the petition previously. There was applications to build apartments, so it's quite refreshing that we're actually looking to put family homes, because we are short of those. And it is a very, very attractive concept. However, it's just too much for this site. So I'm pleased that we haven't got sort of like blocks of 2 and 3 bedroom or 2 bedroom apartments. But when you hear the officer's presentation around, and you can see from that street scene there, you've got row after row of large detached property, and then you've got this chunk, best way I can describe it, the chunk sat there at the end of the road, which just does not fit. So I think for me, the concept of taking a large plot and converting it into multiple family dwellings is very attractive, but this is just too much for this site. And I'd be happy to second the officer's recommendation.
Thank you very much. Councillor Singh.
Thank you, Chair. Actually, agree with the other councillors. It's out of character. I think I agree with the highway officers, but I think the parking space issue as well. So I recommend the officer's recommendation. I support them.
Thank you. Yes, I agree with comments made by councillors. I like the thought of how the actually applicant has actually thought about it. It's just that roof line is just, it throws it out really totally. On that note, I am proposed and seconded. Can I have a show of hands for those agreeing with officer recommendation for refusal? That's unanimous. Okay. Thank you very much. Okay, as I said before, item 8 has been withdrawn. I'm going to pause a little just so Liz can try and get rid of that box which is going to close in 5 hours' time, but we can't really wait that long, as I thought. So if anybody wants to have a quick comfort break or go and something, now is your time. Okay, can I bring the committee back to order, please? Thank you. For all those viewers, I do apologise. We've had some technical issues, but we've had help from councillors and residents, which has been very helpful. Thank you very much. So we go on now to item 8, which is the Cherry Orchard restoration, and that is you, Fiona.
Yeah, it's actually just to confirm that this application's been withdrawn.
That's correct.
Just for completeness, we included the slide, Chairman. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. So then we move on to item 9, which hasn't been withdrawn.
No.
And is here, and that still is you, Fiona.
Yeah.
I'll let you go with that.
Thank you, Chairman. I just wanted to make one point of clarification for you, which is in the plans pack you received, the proposed site plan and ground floor plan is actually the old version. It doesn't have an impact on the decision in any way. It's just that we have had updated that plan as explained in the report because there was reference to the wrong number of the outbuilding. So that plan was saying it was the outbuilding of number 17 St Nicholas Close, whereas actually we don't have that confirmed, and the objectors have clearly identified that that's not the case. So the plan was updated, which I'll show you on the presentation, just to say indicative position of outbuilding. It's not a problem for the purposes of this application because it's outside the red line of the site, and officers have done a full assessment with a site visit, and we have all the information in front of us needed to make this recommendation. So it's just a point of clarification there. So turning to the slides, planning permission is sought for a 2-storey side and rear extension to number 10 St Luke's Close, which is identified on the drawing there. No constraints of note other than to the rear there's the green belt. There's a little delay with the clicker. There we are. These are the existing floor plans. You can see from the bottom left-hand drawing, this application is an end of terrace property, and it forms part of a terrace with 4 properties in total. So you've got our application property number 10, 12, 14 and 16. So it's that row that you can see. Now this is the correct plan, the one I was referring to in the pack, that just these are the outbuildings that are indicated. So it's just for complete transparency there. But this is the extensions that is proposed to number 10. So you can just see the ground floor footprint of it wrapping round the side and rear. Importantly, it is 4.3 metres wide, and we make reference in the report that is actually contrary to our policy, which is an important consideration here. Sorry, I got that delay again. Right, this is the first floor plan, which shows again that width, 4.3 metres, coming out at first floor level, wrapping round to the rear. This is the existing elevation of the property. You can see that large space to the side and the outbuilding set into the rear garden. And this is the proposed, if it will change. Oh, there we are. So this is the proposed side and rear extension. More than half the width of the property, but importantly, I will explain quickly why, which is detailed in the officer's report. Oh, here we are. Sorry. Lots of technical issues, but hopefully we can explain. This visual is helpful. Actually, I'll touch upon this rather than try and go back again with the clicker. If you have a look on the left-hand drawing, that shows you a visual of what the extension will look like, and on the right, the rear elevation and what the rear extension would look like. So they are very large extensions and something that often we wouldn't support. However, in this particular case, I'm going to come back to that. Apologies. There is a large extension on the other end of the terrace. So on this aerial image, you can see that there's 4 chimneys along here, and you've got our property, that's one property. Then we've got, going northwards, number 12, 14 and 16. And number 16 also has a large extension. That extension was approved in 1987, so it is historic, but it does change the character of this group enough to justify, we believe, in this case, an approval of planning permission for a similar large extension. It would balance that elevation. So if you see this image in front of you, you see the 4 houses, our one on the right-hand side, and number 16 on the left-hand side. And number 16, you can see that extension. The way you can differentiate is those 2 windows on each of the 4 properties. So that is explained in detail in the report why we think that's acceptable. It's also just very quickly important to note that planning permission was refused for a new house in this location. And we've touched on that in the report again, and why we think it's different and why we think this particular case is okay, even after refusing that. So thank you, Chairman, and thank you for your patience with the clicker, but that concludes my presentation.
Thank you, Fiona. Thank you for your patience with us trying to get it right. There you go. Okay, is it Cathy Willie? Are you coming to speak? And you're speaking on behalf of Bob Allen, I believe. Okay, as you know, turn it on, 5 minutes, and off you go.
Good evening, and thank you for allowing me the time to speak. I apologise I'm reading from a script, but I want to ensure that all the viewpoints from the residents are captured within these few minutes. My name is Cathy, and I've been a resident of St Luke Close for the majority of my life. Having had a spate of HMOs in our street over recent years, I'm pleased to say that recently we've had more families move in, and it's created a greater sense of community. As residents, we strongly believe it is important to remember that the owner of number 10 has already submitted plans for a separate 3-bedroom dwelling, which was rejected. Currently, the property is rented out with a variety of different residents over the last 12 months, and the general consensus from residents is that it is being used as an HMO property, which a landlord is desperately wanting to extend. Otherwise, why was the first application for a separate dwelling proposed? And why would a 5-bed house require 4 bathrooms as per the plans? For information, the house on the end is number 15, not number 16. And the key difference that we feel as residents on this plan is number 15 is a straight line continuation. It was done 35 years ago, and the same number of bedrooms. It has 1 bathroom in the house and 1 toilet. That's a vast difference between an extension that is also a 2-storey rear bolt-on extension and multiple bathrooms. Equally, having looked at plans for number 10, the residents are very apprehensive by the size of some of the rooms. 1 large toilet is easily big enough to accommodate a bathroom, and it's next to a large study. In fact, a lot of the lower rooms appear to be similar sizes to the other bedrooms, which could potentially suggest an end result of a 7-bed property with 1 large communal room. It is worth noting that the front parking area is already taken up by 2 cars, to the extent that other tenants frequently use my pathway, I'm number 12 next door, to access the property. And there's very little room on the street for any additional cars. We do believe that the plans do not accurately reflect the current situation. The general maintenance of property is already of concern for residents. For most of this year, both the front door and the side gate have been broken with no repair and are viewed as a feared security risk by the community. Equally, I've personally had to fix a leak on the property due to flooding it was causing in my house. Having discussed this plan with the majority of the neighbours on our street and the 2 neighbouring streets, not one resident said they were approval of the plan. Hence the significant number of signatures on the petition. I believe it was 82 we got to. The overall opinion of residents is that landlords are acquiring empty properties and extending in order to maximise their income. There are several examples in neighbouring streets where this has happened, and it's causing problems for the existing residents in terms of parking, noise and overcrowding. Whilst not a planning metric, services are impacted by HMOs. All the properties in these streets have shared mains water supplies where 2 or more properties share the same feed. We are already on the minimal legal limit for water pressure and already have issues where if one property runs water, it can affect and at times stop water for the adjoining property. Being that shared property with number 10, this is something that really worries me. Again, as I've stressed before, it's worth noting this application is for far more than a mere extension to the terrace line. My real personal concern, there was an image of the back. Yes, that one. So, am I allowed to move? To point? This is me here. This is my dining room. And I'm really concerned that bolt-on is going to really impact me. And also, I've spoken with all the other residents in the terrace, And we're all concerned that at the moment, when we sit in our gardens, we have one flat line of sight, just like there is at the front, and we're going to have this thing bolted on the end. So to the residents of the immediate area of the property, it's clear that the previous planning proposal, the current planning proposal, and the last 12 months' history of the property demonstrate the intention of the landlord to develop the property merely for personal gain and without any regards to the residents of our small street. Our concern is that if the approval is granted, once finished it will be operated as an unlicensed large HMO with a continued lack of continuity regarding the residents. This will in turn have a significant social impact to the street, as well as creating further parking and services issues. Personally, I'm really concerned about it. In summary, residents feel it's not wanted, it's not necessary, and we believe not consistent with policy. Thank you.
Well done. Right in your time. Thank you very much. Does anybody have any questions for the petitioner? No? Yes, Councillor Tuckwell.
Yeah, thank you for taking us through your thoughts there. The point you made right at the end there, which is around the line at the back, could you just talk us through your concerns a bit around that?
Can you put your microphone on, please?
I do apologise, I'm sorry. There was a photo of the street front facing, and it's one straight row. Yeah, there you go. So it's one straight row. At the moment, all our gardens are at the back, and it's exactly the same. It's one straight long road. So number 15 was it was a double extension. However, it was entirely the same line, so it doesn't look like any bolt-on. My personal concern is that additional bit on the side is going to overlook and have a real impact. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Cagohill.
Thank you, Chairman, and I'm sure I share the committee sentiments when we say we empathise and sympathise with you on this. You mentioned parking and the constraints surrounding parking. You said there's 2 cars that are currently in front of the house. Please could you expand on parking in that on St Luke's Close, please?
Yes, so obviously I don't know if you wanted to go back to the street area. It's probably the best way to see. So you can see that all 4 houses of the terrace have a drive. Number 10 currently have 2 cars, sometimes 3, depending on, we have a bit of a roundabout of tenants, so it depends what's going on. However, there are no other car parking because all the others are drop curbs. So it is, although there are obviously that photo is a nice clear road, it's obviously a time when people are at work, I cannot see how they would easily accommodate any additional cars.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. No one else? No? Thank you. You may take a seat. Thank you. Before I go to the councillor, we have the applicant has a written statement, and you're going to read that out for us, Lizzie. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. A statement on behalf of the applicant. Dear committee members, my planning application has been made in good faith to increase the size of a family home. The existing house is situated on a large plot of land, providing a substantial total of 366 square metres of garden and parking amenities. We would like to build on 50 square metres of this outside space, a small part which is otherwise unused. The extension has been designed very carefully, mindful of the relevant planning policies and the neighbours' amenities. This is supported by the planning officer, Zara Raza's report relating to the application. The works will also provide us with the opportunity to renovate the existing house, bringing it up to date with current building regulations and making it more sustainable. That's it. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Chumadar, would you like to come to the table, please? Sorry. Councillor Chandel. Sorry, I beg your pardon. I was going to call you Roy, but I thought that wasn't really appropriate either. Obviously, you only have 3 minutes because you're a councillor, so whenever you're ready, sir.
Thank you, Committee Chairman.
what can we say? This conflicts with the criterion, exceeds more than the half the width of the original property, page 76, fifth paragraph. As a whole, the extension fails, page 77. Page 78, it's closer to St Nicholas Close than some previous application. And at the end, page 79, complies, it's a new one, overarching aims, which I believe is something what we used to say in the old days, on balance. This is not a good development, it's not necessary, it's not required. The officers said they had touched on a report on previous application on this property. I don't know why that is mentioned. I understand from the old days that you approve the plans what are in front of you, not what's put before. So if I was to put an application in for 60-storey flats next to a bungalow and then reduce it down to 3, yes, it would sound a lot better, but not necessarily the right thing to have. We've had 82 residents object to this. We've had previous applications, we've had 20, 30. They don't want it here, once again, it's not required. It has been mentioned in a report that another house has been granted permission in 1987. Now, my mathematics, that's 35 years ago. Now, I understand some of you weren't even born then at that time. I was only 24. But having a monstrosity next to you and then using that, can we build another monstrosity next to it only because we had one before? It's been mentioned that about planning permission being granted 35 years ago, and yet in the report papers it says on a previous application this was granted 14 years ago and what was not implemented. The development plan has changed substantially since, with a far greater focus on high quality design, and I think that hits the nail on the head. What was passed before does not necessarily will pass now. We've got floodplains, etc., etc. You can build on anything. We've got green areas. We were sold a CGI of what the property was going to look like. I'm not a great fan of those because, I mean, it looks absolutely... You can bring it up. Tom and Jerry cartoons, as far as I'm concerned, really. I mean, they don't accurately reflect the full 360-degree nature of planning applications at all. It's was it a 1D, 2D, what you might like to call it? So I support the residents, and I hope, Chairman and Committee, you look into this because, once again, they do have concerns. I know we've got Article 4 and everything else. Sorry.
Thank you. You know. Does anybody have any questions for the Councillor? Councillor Chamdal, thank you very much, and forgive me for my earlier error. Okay, so we've heard from everybody here. Now I'll open it to the floor. Councillor Tuckwell, Councillor Gohill.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to the petitioners and Ward Councillor for sharing their thoughts. I'm struggling with this one, and I'm surprised that it's actually up for approval. I have to say, I'm struggling with it. A couple of things I'd just like to test with officers. I mean, we talk about the planning balance, which is tidying up the block. I've never come across that before. Balance normally is of benefit to something. I'm struggling to see the benefit of putting symmetry into that block, and it is out with policy on the width of it. What I'd be also interested to hear from officers is, one is just to sort of try and understand a little bit more about how we arrived at the decision that on balance this is acceptable. But I'd also like to try and understand how adrift are we? So it's 4.3 is it in width. What would it be in width to comply with policy? And then I'll be interested to hear from other colleagues around the table. But those are the couple of points from me, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do officers, which Fiona or Rob? So it's going to be a double act. So who's going first? Okay, Fiona's going to go first, and then Ros is going to... Oh, sorry, Ros is going to go first. And she said first.
Yeah, so I'm going to go first just while Fiona double-checks her measurements in order to answer that question for you, Councillor. I thought it might be helpful if I address the HMO point before Fiona goes into the details of the, character and appearance, etc. So ordinarily, it's permitted development to change the use of a dwelling to a C4 home in multiple occupation. So that's a small HMO for between 3 to 6 unrelated individuals. So it's important to note that this particular property is in an area where there's an Article 4 restriction. So that permitted development right has been removed. So it wouldn't be possible for the applicant to turn it into a small HMO without first seeking planning permission. So if they wanted to do that, they would need to apply, and then we'd go through the planning process and we would consider the impacts of that. So that's really just what I wanted to clarify around that. Are you ready, Fiona? Yeah.
Thank you, Chairman. I think to comply with the policy, straight up answering that, it would need to be 3 metres wide. So it is 1.3 metres wider than what our policy says you can have. But the important thing for us when we're looking at this is going sort of a bit further back. We're looking at the actual statute. And where we're going with that is that the Planning and Compulsory Purchase Act of 2004 talks about you must be in accordance with the development plan, so you must comply with policies in all respect unless there are other material considerations that indicate otherwise. And for us, the existence of an identical extension on the other end of the same group, that for us is another material consideration that carries considerable weight. So, in summary, we're looking at the balance of the group from that point of view. So we would still have the continued building line, we would still have the continued height, and overall we would have the same width either side. This property also has a bit more space than the other one, as you measure it, not by much, but it's got a larger garden, there isn't an outbuilding, so there's other factors we've considered there. But the most important thing for us is this other material considerations part that we must consider, and that's set out in statute. I think it's important that I touch upon the rear extension because really helpfully the petitioner highlighted that would break the rear building line as well. But because the rear building line is broken, that doesn't necessarily mean it's unacceptable. So we have our policy DMHD1 that talks about what extensions would be acceptable. And quite often we allow a new rear extension on a group that's never been extended before. That's quite common. Similarly, on a semi-detached house, you would have an extension allowed on one half, not the other. That's not uncommon. So actually breaking that rear building line, we don't think would be harmful because it has been done in a way that is subordinate, compliant in the terms of the 45-degree line. So I'd like to just reassure you on the amenity impact. That's been carefully considered through policy and through this application that your windows, we believe, will not be affected to such a degree that would be harmful in terms of light and outlook. So that, I've kind of linked the two answers there together, the character and appearance issue and the amenity issue. But for us, the key thing in this case, which stands apart and which we've been completely transparent in the report, and the councillor touched on that exactly right, this is contrary to policy. And we have tried to make that very, very clear. But we are very concerned that if this went to appeal, the other material considerations would be given considerable weight. And that's why we have recommended approval for that 1.3 metre wide bit that's contrary. Thank you.
Thank you, Fiona. Do you want to come back?
No, that's a really useful explanation. I think it's hopefully that's helpful to the whole committee to try and understand that. But it still sits with me that we're sitting on something which is 30% larger than our own policy dictates. But I do get that there are other factors that need to be taken into account. But I'll pause there and let other members have their say.
I just want to emphasise to the committee that officers feel, which I will ask them to re-evaluate about what our chances are on appeal for refusal. Councillor Gohill.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd like to echo Councillor Tuckwell's sentiments. I think, this borough has policies for a reason, and going so far out of our way doesn't seem sensible all the time. But I've read the this agenda item in depth, and I have a number of questions. first being on page 72, it was mentioned that the previous reason for refusal on the planning history was the parking. I don't think this has been adequately addressed, so could that be addressed, please, for the current application? I'd also like to know, it makes me really uncomfortable to think that this application is recommended for approval based on something that was based on a house that was extended 35 years ago. So please could you quantify how heavily this is weighed? I know you've touched on it briefly, but I'd like a specific weight if that's possible, please. Page 78 refers to page 70. Well, sort of on page 78 there is apologies. Here we go. They talk about the previous refusal. And what was the scale and the depth of the previously refused application, and how do the current plans differ from that? If there could be a bit more explanation on that front. And the final question, sorry, I appreciate there's a lot, is actually based on what one of the petitioners said, one of the residents said about water issues and how they're on the legal minimum. Given that there's going to be a number of bathrooms in this property and they're supposedly on the minimum, could we get some comment on that and what the impact on the livelihood of neighbours would be, please? Thank you.
Fine. Fiona?
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you for the questions. So I'm going to start by answering your third question on the previous refusal. So that was for a materially different scheme. So it was for a new house completely. So the amount of weight we've sorry, I'm just going to find the slide. The amount of weight we're giving to this decision isn't huge because they don't need to overcome the reasons for refusal in the same way because it's a materially different scheme. So we're now not ticking off the reasons for refusal, and that links back to your first question about the previous parking issue. So previously, with a new house, you would need to provide off-street parking for the new occupiers of that unit, of that new unit. But that isn't needed in this case because it's an extension to an existing house. Or, well, it's not needed in the same way. So we have an uplift in the number of bedrooms, but the number of bedrooms for a 5-bed house and how many parking spaces they need, that works on this site. So that parking isn't a concern for us in terms of relating it back to the London plan standards, etc. So Alan may be able to come in and discuss that more, but that's my view of it. So that wouldn't be a turning factor on it. I appreciate that that it is a close, and I agree that street scene view doesn't show that everyone parking there. But still, there is enough parking for this particular house in single family use, and planning permission is required for a HMO. So just answering your second point in terms of the amount of weight we're attaching to the decision, normally we wouldn't attach much weight to a decision from 1987 because it might be an anomaly in the street scene. This is an anomaly, but it's an anomaly on the other end of the group, of the same group that you see in the same street scene views. So for us, we're attaching substantial weight to that decision, and that's the only reason. If that wasn't there, we would not be recommending approval for this application. That's my thoughts. It would need to be reduced, even though it's kind of tucked away in the corner to a degree. You get a good view of that whole group, and that's why we've included this. So for us, that the existence of that extension, not necessarily the permission, the existence of that extension carries substantial weight. So it's not the fact that it was allowed in 1987, even if it was allowed earlier, or there was no planning history for it. I still think we would come to the same conclusion as officers. Thank you.
The other question was
water
on
issues.
Water.
Apologies, I didn't cover that. It's not a material planning consideration for us, so we wouldn't be able to refuse planning permission on that basis. I'm not sure exactly what's involved in the building regulation stage, but my understanding is they would look at services, how it's connected and those things, but planning permission couldn't be refused due to water pressure, unfortunately.
Has that answered all your questions, Councillor Gohan?
Thanks, Chairman. I would like to raise I think there's a lot to be seen on this site. Is it possible for the committee to arrange a site viewing?
That is up to committee to decide, not for me. So I will put that to a vote. I will do that
In
at
that
the
case,
end.
I ask the committee.
I will do that at the end. I just want to make sure that everybody has the right to speak. Councillor Mann next.
Thank you to the officers. Thank you for the information given by the councillors and the petitioners and the residents. In my short time I've been on this committee, it's probably one of the ones that's made me the most uncomfortable, if I'm honest with you. My question goes back to the potential use of this potentially as an HMO, going back to its planning history in terms of a detached dwelling which was refused, etc. My question with HMO leads on to my first question, which was mentioned earlier about the number of bathrooms in this property. Could that just be clarified for me so then I can just carry on with my question?
Yes, and forgive us as a committee because we're using words like Article 4 and you're new. So I will let officers explain that a bit more and we'll go from there.
Thanks, Chairman. Yeah, just to clarify then, so this property can't change to an HMO without planning permission. So ordinarily, it could change to a small HMO, but there's a particular restriction that the council has put on this particular area, which prevents that. So they would need planning permission for it.
Oh, that's fine. I understand that bit. But my first question is the number of bathrooms proposed in this property. I thought I heard 4. Is that correct?
Yeah. It's 4, but
yeah, I'm going to bring it up just on the
plans
plans to show you, because there's one downstairs and then 3 upstairs, I believe. Yeah, so you can just see this is the proposed first floor plan. There's a bathroom here, and there's a bathroom, 2 bathrooms, sorry, here. So showing as en suites in those 2 bedrooms, and then there's also the 4th bathroom down here at ground floor level. So 3 upstairs and 1 downstairs.
I mean, maybe it's me being naive, but it does seem like it's going towards the end of the HMO, and I know there's an Article 4 there, and reading this it says that they need to apply for planning for an HMO, but if they did apply for planning for an HMO subsequently, what's the chances of it being approved? And secondly, the parking, if it was becoming an HMO, then obviously there's an issue with the parking. So that was my first question about it potentially being used as an HMO. The second question was, if we're classifying the development on the other side of the block, which was done 35 odd years ago, as an anomaly, if we're classifying that word has been verbally used as anomaly, why are we then justifying that anomaly for this construction here? I still am not fully comfortable with that argument. Ross?
Yeah, if I can try and address those points. So just starting with your query about, how likely would it be that we would permit an HMO. Want to be clear that we need to be careful not to go beyond our remit in terms of making the decision on this application. So we must consider the application that's before us, and we must sort of bear in mind that there is the planning regime is in place, and that there would need to be this separate application, and we would go through the full planning process to look at the different impacts of that and reach a conclusion in accordance with the development plan. So it wouldn't be right for me to kind of say what I thought in that sense, and we have to look at what we've got in front of us, so we can't make a decision based on that concern in effect. The other thing I just wanted to touch on, I think we've talked a lot about officers' thoughts in relation to the previous consent, and I think my colleague Fiona summed it up really well. I think we wouldn't ordinarily give much weight to such an old decision, but what we need to bear in mind is that if we refuse this and there's an appeal, the inspector is going to look at this site and he's going to consider what the existing character is, and for us, we think that adding something symmetrical on the other side of the terrace wouldn't be harmful. So I honestly would be surprised if we were successful in defending an appeal on this one.
I'm going to ask a sort of question as well. The fear of not going with the officer's recommendation, how many of the conditions that are in this application at the moment would we lose?
So officers have proposed conditions to protect amenity of neighbours. So we've proposed a condition to prevent the insertion of additional windows without planning permission, and we've proposed a condition to ensure that the side-facing first-floor windows are obscure glazed. So potentially, if we were in an appeal scenario, the inspector may not choose to impose those if he did allow the appeal, or she.
So we have everything before us. We have on the floor, I haven't forgotten, don't worry. We have on the floor that we have a site visit. I want to know somebody who'd second that, please. Councillor Tuber, I saw you indicating to second that proposal.
I will second that, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Then can I have the committee, can the committee vote on that? Would you like to go to a site visit to see this? So there we go. We are a unanimous decision for a site visit. I will be making that quite clear to all of members that I don't take this lightly when we have site visits, so I will name and shame you if you don't turn up. Okay? You have to have a very good excuse for not turning up, and it will be quite soon as well, because obviously we want to make sure that we don't lose it under delegated powers. Okay? So that would be a site visit. So Liz, can we make a note of that? Okay? So we can move on. Okay? Then we go on to item... Yes. So what happens is that the committee has decided that they want to go to the site to have a view of it. It will be under strict controls with the officers. We will not be allowed to be approached by any residents, members of the committee. That might clear that very obviously. And we will make a determination that the councillors here wish to see the site, see whether how that would their development impact on that. And from there we'll come back to the committee, and then we'll make a decision. If you wish to have your rights to speak again, then you have to get a new petition together of the same amount of signatures, and then you have your right to speak again on that application when it comes back. Yes, of course. Everything's exactly the same. You have 5 minutes, and your council only has 3. So. No, you have time now. You can start tomorrow. It's fine. Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Okay, we'll move on to item 10. We've already done item 11, which is Hayden House. Katie.
Oh, thank you, Chairman. So this is the final item on tonight's agenda. So it's an application for prior approval to convert offices to 6 self-contained flats. So there are no external alterations to the building. It's a purpose-built office block that's now being proposed to go to flats. So it is different from a planning application. I guess it's important to note that with the prior approval applications, we can only assess a closed group of conditions. And in this case, the relevant conditions concern highway impacts, contamination risks in relation to the building, flooding risks in relation to the building, impacts of noise from commercial premises on the intended occupants of this development, and also the provision of adequate natural light in all habitable rooms. So, unlike a planning permission or planning application, we can't refuse an application on impacts on neighbours or the character of the area. So this is the site here. As you can see there, in terms of planning constraints, there isn't any. It's essentially in a residential location. This is the building here. There you go, and this is the proposed site plan. So there's 9 parking spaces on there. So six flats, 9 parking spaces, including a disabled bay. So in terms of highway impacts, it has been determined that there wouldn't be any impact on the surrounding highways. There's enough parking spaces on site, and it's pretty much commensurate to the existing traffic generation as its use as offices. The clicker is, there we go, and there's just some other plans of the ground floor layout and the first floor, and there's also roof plan as well. So officers have assessed the proposal in terms of the matters that we can assess, and We've determined that there wouldn't be any highway impacts, contamination risks, fine in terms of there are conditions to ensure that we do comply with the number of spaces, parking spaces on site, the number of cycle parking spaces, contamination risks as well. Flooding is acceptable. It has gone to the Environment Agency and they've demonstrated that the existing floor levels is above the flood design levels. In terms of impact on noise from commercial premises, it is in a residential location, so the residential uses, there wouldn't be any impacts on the proposed flats. And in terms of adequate natural light into all habitable rooms, I've submitted a sunlight daylight assessment which is considered acceptable using the existing windows on the building. So officers have recommended that prior approval be granted. Thanks.
Thank you, Katie. As there's no petitions, we go straight to the floor. Councillor Gohill. Councillor Tuckwell.
Thank you, Chairman, and thanks, Councillor Tuckwell, for letting me speak first. I like this plan. I don't think there's any issues that are really overwhelmingly concerning regarding this. I like that it's taken into consideration important environmental factors such as, not including any contaminated land, having EV car spaces there, and also even gone as far as taking into consideration the noise levels during construction. So I'm quite happy to go ahead with officers' recommendations for this and propose the plans, if that's okay, Chairman.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Tuckwell.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I like this plan as well, and I think it brings an unused building into use for residential purposes, and it also includes family homes. So I'm happy to second that.
Thank you. I've just got a couple of questions myself before I go to the vote. Is the parking allocated? And obviously the apartment at the top has only got velo windows, but I'm led to believe that still passes the criteria, if I'm correct.
Yeah, so in terms of parking allocations, there is a condition, so they will submit that to say which flats that each parking space is allocated to. In terms of the upper floor units, they're actually maisonettes, so there are additional rooms in the roof, but they're part of the flats on the first floor as well.
On that note, I'm proposed and seconded. Can I have a show of hands, all in favour with officer's recommendation for approval? That's unanimous. Thank you very much. Thank you all for your attendance this evening. I do apologise for those people who are watching online that we had technical difficulties, but I'm sure it was more amusing seeing us talking without any microphones on than anything else. So on that note, I'll just wait for Liz to turn off the feed, and we will wish you a good night.